Good morning. No, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Okay. Now, when you think of Holocaust survivors, you think of somebody like Anne Frank that you saw the exhibit, or somebody like that had a number tattooed on their arm, or was a hidden child. There are many stories that Holocaust survivors can tell that picture them as a survivor, and I didn't fit any of those categories. So for many years, I never considered myself a Holocaust survivor because I had none of those typical pictures of what a Holocaust survivor had gone through. Eventually, I changed my mind, and I hope you'll agree with me when I'm finished. Let me tell you about my families. My mother's family and my father's family both came from Poland. And during the early 1900s, life in Poland for the Jewish people was made very difficult with something called pogroms, which were fights by the police and the military against the Jewish population. So a lot of people left Poland. My parents, with their families, left and traveled through Europe looking for a safe place to be. They went to many countries, but both of them ended up in Berlin, Germany. Now, Berlin, the capital of Germany, was a gorgeous city, very sophisticated. Lots of theaters and lots of museums and many higher education facilities, lots of schools. And it was a very welcoming place. All children were allowed to go to public school. People were allowed to earn a living, and things were very quiet and very calm and very nice. My father was one of 8 children, and my grandparents opened a bakery. So all the kids worked in the bakery, which was the way it was in those days. My mother was one of 4. And life was pretty good. But something happened in the early 30s, known as the Nuremberg Laws. Now, these laws were proclaimed by the Nazi Party that came into power, the head of which was Adolf Hitler. The Nuremberg Laws said no Jewish children were permitted to go to public school anymore. A Jewish doctor couldn't treat anybody other than Jewish patients. A Jewish businessman could not do business with anybody other than other Jews. So things in Germany got very uncomfortable for the Jewish population. And many people saw this as being a threat. So they left. My father's parents, 1 brother and 3 sisters, decided to get out of Germany. And they left for a place called Palestine. That's now the country of Israel. By the time my parents met, life in Germany was terrible. They tried to get out, but many avenues were closed. Then something happened on November 9th, 1938. Something called Kristallnacht. Anybody hear of it? It's called the Night of Broken Glass. And it's called that because that was the night that the military, the police, stormed the streets and smashed the windows of every business that was owned by Jews. Smashed the windows and burned the synagogues, the Jewish houses of worship. Burned their prayer books, destroyed their businesses. This was the beginning of the Holocaust. The next day, my father was taken out of the apartment and put on a train with hundreds and hundreds of other men. and he was being sent back to what they called country of origin, which meant that he was born in Poland, so they were sending them to Warsaw, the capital of Poland. And he found himself in a one-bedroom apartment, sharing it with 12 other men. Tiny quarters, but the worst of it was, they didn't know why, or what was going to happen to their family that they were taken away from back in Germany. My mother panicked. She didn't know what to do. Finally, she was told that if by some chance she could get a way of leaving the country, maybe my dad would be able to come back from Poland and join her, on the condition they left right away, though. My mother and her two sisters started standing on lines. Every consulate, every embassy. Sometimes they waited for days online. Any country that would issue them something called a visa. That's not a MasterCard Visa kind of thing. This visa is a piece of paper that allows you to enter another country. It's permission to go to a welcoming country. My mother was thrilled. She got a visa to Siam. I know you've never heard of Siam, right? Only if you saw The King and I. Siam is now known as Thailand. Now, if you know anything about geography, Thailand is a country over there in the Far East by Japan and China. And it's a very poor country, very undeveloped. It's called a third world country. My mother didn't care. She now had a piece of paper that said we can leave Germany. So she took the paper to the police station and registered it. And then my father was able to make his way back from Poland, back to Berlin, to join her so they could immediately leave the country. But my mother was smart. Her brother had gone to Cuba. So she sent him money and asked him if he could get a visa to Cuba. In the meantime, while my father was traveling back from Poland to Germany, the visa for Cuba came. Now, making a decision of which country to go to was pretty simple. Cuba is a magnificent vacation island in the Caribbean. All the cruise ships went there. Or going to a third world country like Thailand, then Siam. Not knowing anybody there, of course. So the choice was not a difficult one. My parents decided they wanted to go to Cuba, especially since Cuba was only 90 miles off the coast of America. And we were eventually wanting to come to America. We even had what they call immigration numbers to allow us to come into the United States. But sometimes you could wait a year or two before your number was accepted. So what better place for our number to be accepted than in Cuba? So my mother was able to book passage on a ship called the SS St. Louis. It was owned by the Hamburg America line, and it left from Hamburg, Germany. So my parents took what few things they were allowed to take. They only were allowed to take a limited amount of money, only one suitcase per person. And we got on a train and went to Hamburg, to the dock. Now here we are at this dock of Hamburg with this gorgeous cruise ship sitting there. And there were banners flying, and there was a band playing, and there was a photographer running around taking pictures of everybody. It was very festive. It was beautiful. And the headlines in the newspaper read, 937 Jewish passengers are going on this beautiful cruise ship, and their destination is Havana, Cuba. Wow, this is great. Getting out of Germany, first of all, and away from all this Nazi persecution, and what better way to go than on this beautiful cruise ship? So we get on the ship, and things are lovely. There are dances and parties and movies and typical cruise ship. And then we get to Havana Harbor, and they don't let us dock. They keep us in the harbor. And nobody understands what's going on. Why? I mean, our suitcases are packed and ready to get off the ship, and they're not letting us get off. They're not even docking the ship. So then a little boat comes out to the ship, and the captain's meeting with these people, and they look very military and very influential type people, and nobody knows what's going on. Finally, my uncle gets on a little boat, comes out to the ship, and yells at my parents. They're up on deck, and he's down in this little boat, and they're screaming at each other, "Mañana, mañana." That's Spanish. They speak Spanish in Cuba. It means tomorrow. Why was he saying that? Because he felt that this was all just red tape and everything was going to be smoothed out, and by tomorrow you'll get off the ship. Well, that didn't happen. You see, the ship was chosen by the Nazi propaganda machine in Germany to show the world that these 900 Jewish passengers were unwanted cargo. And he had infiltrated, or the Nazi propaganda machine infiltrated the president of Cuba, President Brew, and had influence over him, and told him in no uncertain terms, "You will not allow these people in." And he said, "Okay." Because you see, he was corrupt also. And he found out that the visas that we had, that we paid a lot of money for, he didn't get any of it. The man who issued the visas pocketed all the money. And he didn't like that too much. So he had no problem in saying, "Okay, the papers are worthless, I won't recognize them, and you can't get off." The headline in the German newspaper that announced our departure now read, "Jews not permitted entry into Cuba. You see, the world doesn't want them. We're going to do the world a favor, and we're going to eliminate them for you." Trying to tell the world that they are going to eliminate the Jewish people. So now there's all this negotiation going on. You see, the captain was not a member of the Nazi Party, so that he did not condone all that was going on. And he was desperate to tell, and my mother said, he got on the public address system and he promised the passengers that under no circumstances would he take the ship back to Germany with the passengers. He would try anything in his power to go anywhere else in the world rather than bring them back to Germany, because he knew what would happen to them if they went back. And then he said, we're only 90 miles away from Miami. Let me see if the United States will take us. So he turned the ship around and he got to so close to Miami, my dad said you could almost read the license plates on the cabs on Ocean Avenue. That's how close we were to America. But the minute that happened, the Coast Guard came out and sent us away from American waters. They were afraid somebody might jump ship or try to swim ashore. God knows what would happen. And they threw us out of American waters. A telegram sent to the president was never answered. They didn't want any part of us. We were only 900 people. You probably have 900 kids in your school. Not a lot of people. Any country could have accepted us. Now there was all this negotiation. They contacted every country of the world, begging, pleading for somebody to take us. But the captain had no choice. He had to turn the ship back towards Europe because he was running low on fuel and supplies. And by the time we got back to Europe, 4 countries agreed to take some of the passengers. No one country said, oh, I'll take the whole bunch. So the passenger list was divided into 4 pieces. Belgium, France, Holland, and England were the 4 countries that agreed to take some passengers. My father was a very wise man. And I used to ask him, why did you choose England? He says, I wanted to get as far away from Germany as possible. And he said, maybe that English Channel that divides Europe and England might protect us. Little did he know that within weeks, the 3 countries were invaded by the Nazi troops and overrun. And England was the only country that fought against the German troops. So now we are in England, living in London. Suddenly we are getting bombed. And we're living in shelters. And houses are being destroyed. And people are killed all the time because of German bombings. But my life in England was nothing compared to what it would have been had we gone to Belgium, France, or Holland. Because most of those people didn't survive the war. And we lived in England till the end of the war. In 1946, we came to the United States. And we came by ship and docked in New York, and it was Memorial Day weekend. Only one problem. There was a dock strike. We couldn't get off the ship. So it was a little frightening. We thought maybe we'd have the same problem that we had in Cuba. But fortunately, after the weekend, the dock strike was ended and we were able to get off the ship. And that was May, so we spent the summer in Belmar, New Jersey, where one of my aunts had settled. But my other aunt got us an apartment in Astoria, New York. So we went to Astoria, and I spent my childhood there. But I married a man from Belmar. So that brought me back to New Jersey. And we got married Memorial Day weekend. So it's a very important time in my life. 56 years. He put up with me all these times. That's basically my story. But the reason I found the definition of survivor does fit me is because the ship was singled out to be a significant demonstration of what the Nazi plan was. Here we were, 900 plus people that did nothing but belong to the wrong religion. The Nazis were determined to eliminate, first by getting them out of Germany, and those that remained to be annihilated, to be done away with. That's what prejudice, bigotry, hate, and anti-Semitism can lead to. I have a homework assignment for you. I know nobody likes to do homework. However, this homework assignment doesn't have to be completed for 20 years. Okay? But I have to have your promise that you will complete it. The assignment is this. Because we survivors are getting on in years, you will be the last to see survivors in the flesh. Who is going to tell the story of the survivors? You are. So your assignment is to pass on the message to your children, your grandchildren, all your relatives and friends. Because if we don't combat hate and bigotry and prejudice, when it starts, we might live to see it happen again. We have seen other genocides. Genocides in Rwanda, Cambodia, even now in Syria. These tragedies are still happening. And unless we stand up when we see bullying and prejudice and hate and fight against it, it will fester and it will grow. And God forbid, it will grow into another Holocaust. 11 million people, not soldiers, not people in uniform, civilians, were slaughtered for no reason other than they were different. Their religion was different. They might have been Jehovah's Witnesses. They might have been Roma or Gypsy, Catholic priests, the disabled, the mentally retarded. Many categories of people were slaughtered for no reason other than they were hated. And if we do not stand up, I pity the world for what might happen. Does everybody accept my homework assignment? Yes. Thank you. That's basically my story. I hope a lot of you have questions that I would